Phil the MMA Dude back with the Split Decision Podcast, episode number 98, here with my always brilliant co-host, the Fight Geek. Fight Geek, how you doing this week, man?
Doing excellent. Happy to be back talking about a busy week in combat sports. How are you, Phil?
Doing very well, very well. So, there's a very busy week in combat sports. You've got that right. Here's what's on tap today, folks. First, I'm going to ask my opening question to Fight Geek. Then, we're going to quickly recap and review UFC on ABC 2, Vettori versus Holland. Then it's on to Bellator 257, Nemkov versus Davis 2, and Anderson versus Yakhshimuradov. After that, UFC Vegas 24, preview and picks of Whittaker versus Gastelum. It is Jake Paul versus Ben Askren Fight Week. We have to touch on that very quickly, even though Fight Geek won't want to. And then after that, it's listener questions and more. Whew, Fight Geek.
Wow.
That's a lot.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah, that is a mouthful. So let me start off, because there's even more news. Let me start off with this opening question for you. In the last few days, Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor's little friendly facade has fallen apart completely. Dustin Poirier called out McGregor for lying about giving the $500,000 donation to the Good Fight Foundation in the lead up to their second fight. Conor got so upset that he has now said that the fight is off. He was that humiliated by it. He said, "The fight is off, kid. Good luck with your old contract." And he is now trying to find a new opponent. How much stock do you put into this? Is McGregor serious? Is he really trying to avoid the fight and get out of it? And if so, what do you make of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think clearly it's a ploy to find either another opponent or prolong what the time he needs to implement the changes to actually have a realistic shot at performing in a different way.
Oh wow, you think he's purposefully trying to put the fight off at the very least, so that because he doesn't have enough time to improve and win right now?
Well, I think based on publicly what he's putting out is that he's learning these new techniques, these Thai techniques. He's going to be more suited for the kicks and stuff like that. But there's only been a couple months. He hasn't even been able to be training full time during that time based on the medical suspension. So I think a short turnaround really benefits Dustin Poirier. I think clearly Conor was, offended by the fact that Poirier went public with that information and has since kind of, tried to do what McGregor does, and that's pull like kind of the Trump/McGregor card and be like, okay, kid, I'll fight someone else and kind of still, play that red panty night kind of card that he tries to play. I think it's
just so lame, though, because, he just got his ass whooped by this guy.
Yeah, well, 100%.
He just got slept by him inside 2 rounds.
He still has a legion and an army of people who, every time he puts a narrative out there, actually believe and defend that narrative. So, I mean,
I think he's hemorrhaging fans. I think he's hemorrhaging fans. Here,
I think he's probably feeling, a person has, this is just my, personal psychoanalysis, take it for what it's worth. But for a person like Conor McGregor, who exudes ultimate confidence, the way he lost that last fight is something that when he looks in the mirror, he has to see and he has to know.
Absolutely.
He got taken into deep waters. Throughout Conor McGregor's career, deep waters have been the end of him. A rematch with Dustin Poirier shows there's no way he worked on his gas tank in that amount of time in a way that's meaningful. And that wasn't even really the biggest problem. So Poirier has other ways to beat him.
So let me ask you this. Am I being hyperbolic?
Not to bag on him. I know Conor's dangerous, but I think that it bodes well for him, especially versus someone like Dustin Poirier right now, to either get a little more time to prepare or to switch off into someone like Nate Diaz, which is a more,
I mean, that would be so humiliating to McGregor. I mean, could he ever be taken seriously again?
Because of this public spat. This is his built-in excuse. So now
everyone knows what it really means. It means I don't believe in myself. I think I'm going to lose to Dustin again, and then I'm going to lose a bunch of my, my net worth and a bunch of my brand. I'm frightened of him. I'm very frightened of losing again.
Well, I mean,
again, I'm not saying he's afraid of. I'm not saying he's afraid of Dustin. I'm not saying he's afraid of Dustin, but he is afraid of losing.
He's afraid of Dustin, but
he's afraid of losing to Dustin.
how his value sways, in the company's eyes, where his career goes if he loses or gets stopped in the first round again or whatever by Dustin Poirier.
But I mean, okay, so
he becomes the clown.
He's become the clown right now. He just stole $500,000 from poor needy children. I mean, that's the lowest of the low.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting, talking point and storyline. For his sake, I hope that they're able to, exchange the appropriate information, because whether it's a rivalry or not, agreed, that's just not something you want to put out there.
I mean, Conor said he's an inbred hillbilly and that he's not paying him anything and that the fight's off.
Well, yeah. Well, Conor's retired twice too, so.
Let me ask you this. Am I being, this is my final question on it, am I being hyperbolic? Am I being overdramatic when I say that this is by far the biggest public L that Conor's ever taken? I feel like there's never been a time like this where he's been so thoroughly humiliated in terms of his character being exposed so brutally. I mean, it's so clear how horrible he looks.
He's been accused of many things.
Right. No, I understand. He's been accused of many things, but he was never found guilty. This is clear. He lied. He was going to give money to this children's donation. He lied about it. He's a liar.
This doesn't speak well to his character, in my opinion, but I don't think it's the worst thing he's ever done. No.
What's worse?
He sent bros into post-traumatic shock based on his actions at the Barclays Center. So, I mean...
Speaking of which, he did her a solid this weekend because she was getting into heat for the better red than dead comments, and then he comes out...
I understand, but, I mean, he owed her one, right?
Yeah, I mean...
Maybe that's what
I think he certainly got her back. I think she should be grateful because she was getting lit up before that.
Yeah. I feel you there. But, yeah, so there's endless speculation that could go on. The best part about it is that this is the fight game, and all the extra drama just adds to it. So
they have to fight now.
I don't think that Conor and Dustin will never fight again. I'm sure that trilogy will happen. Whether there's, extra drama involved, I'd put money on it. So
it would be very embarrassing for Conor if he doesn't meet Dustin in the octagon on July 10th. Very embarrassing, in my opinion.
I agree, because, up to this point, that has been the narrative. So what would have shifted in Conor's mind?
I think just his concern about losing the third fight, and then people say, oh, he's not afraid. Shut up, Phil. I know he's not afraid. He's afraid of what will happen if he loses. He's not afraid of Dustin. He's afraid of the consequences.
It's not about being afraid of that.
He's afraid of the consequences of losing a third time.
Robert Whittaker was talking about in his interview I just listened to. It's, anything can happen on that night. People who predict fights and people think they know everything about what's going to happen all the time. That doesn't make sense to me. MMA is the most unpredictable, again, I don't know if it's a sport. It's people fighting each other.
Of course it's a sport.
One. Yeah. So, it's a lot more than a sport, though. It's a lot more personal and a lot more will.
All right, Fight Geek, we got to move on.
Anyways,
but to wrap it up, do you think that McGregor fights Dustin Poirier on July 10th?
Yes, I think it's all just kind of semantics and extra drama and fluff to build the fight.
Okay, excellent. So quickly, let's go to the UFC on ABC2 recap and review. Marvin Vettori got a unanimous decision victory over Kevin Holland in the main event with some total domination in terms of grappling and wrestling.
Workmanlike performance, I would say.
Sorry?
I said it was more of a workmanlike performance. Very
right. It was
solid,
not a great
intelligent
fight. Yeah. Am I right in saying that I think, I understand that Marvin keeps winning and that's all that matters. I know that he just jumped to the number 3 contender at middleweight. That was a big jump from number 6. He's got 1 stoppage in his last 8 fights, Fight Geek. Is it fair to say that he's a very boring fighter?
Well, I don't think you can dub someone boring. It's like, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. So I thought that was actually a performance similar to what you would have seen of like a George St. Pierre at the end of his career, where he's very defensive and then grappling heavy and intelligent.
But Marvin didn't really go for the submission.
No, he didn't, but, maybe... I think there's no doubt that Marvin is, well-rounded and elite, but it's clear that he lacks, finishing skills and ability. Right now, he doesn't have, arguably a one-shot knockout to this point. He doesn't, finish a lot of fights, but he does win the vast majority of the time he's in the octagon. And he did take, a young Israel Adesanya to, basically his closest bout, other than the Gastelum.
A long time ago. A very long time
ago. But that was a long time ago for Marvin Vettori, who's improved leaps and bounds since then as well, and has shown, maybe he's not, the sexiest style in the world. He's a very, very tough style to beat, and it's going to take a lot to beat a guy like that in a main event. 5 rounds.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Let's assume for a second Whittaker versus Gastelum, which is this weekend. I want to assume Gastelum wins. I think we all know that Whittaker gets that Adesanya rematch if he beats Gastelum this weekend. But if Whittaker loses and Gastelum wins, do you make Marvin versus Israel too?
That's a tough one. I almost would make Gastelum.
Really?
Gastelum versus Vettori, yes. Because
Gastelum Vettori. I thought you were going to say, okay.
But Gastelum Vettori at that point, as the 2 winners, is the true number 1 contender. I think that makes more sense.
Okay.
Right now.
Okay.
But I expect Whittaker to win, and then I think Whittaker should 100% be the next challenger for Adesanya after he comes back down.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, just moving through the card fast. We don't have too much time. Definitely don't have time to cover everything. Mackenzie Dern with a first-round sub via armbar against Nina Ansaroff, a.k.a. Nina Nunes, at 4 minutes and 48 seconds of round number 1.
Did we get a formal announcement on Nina Nunes changing her name? Because
we did not. No, we definitely did not get a formal
because I saw multiple publications publishing it that way, so... it'd be cool if that is the case. It's on
Tapology. No, Tapology's got her listed as Nina Nunes.
All right, so maybe that happened behind the scenes. Either way, I'd be interested to find out. My analysis of the fight: Mackenzie Dern, clearly the best performance of her young career.
It's incredible how much better she's gotten, isn't it?
I don't think it is. She's a very young girl when she started. She
used to have no striking, like zero.
Yeah, well, of course. She was 18 years old when she started her MMA career. Now she's, 24? She's got some years in the gym. She has, found her gym of choice that seems to be helping her. And then the biggest improvement I've noticed is in her physique, her physicality, her stamina. She's in the best shape of her life at a great age. So, The arrow's pointing straight up right now.
I think she's going to be a absolute title contender and could be champion. Do you think she will be champion?
We answered this question last episode, and we both said yes. She still has championship potential, and this weekend did nothing to change that.
Okay, I'm allowed to re-ask questions, Fight Geek. Chill out, bro.
We're on a time crunch. They already heard that question.
All right. Daniel Rodriguez beat the crap out of Mike Perry. I mean, just
bludgeoned Mike Perry.
Bludgeoned him. Mike Perry. It was by far the worst he's ever looked in my opinion. Zero head movement. Looks like he's really regressed.
Flat-footed, slow, zero head movement.
Head movement. Zero.
At this point, is it really? I mean, the guy's nose is going to basically be broken in every fight he fights for the rest of his career. Agreed?
Yeah, yes. I agree.
I mean, he doesn't move his head, and he takes 2 jabs, and his nose is sideways every fight now. So
I don't know why he didn't get into the head movement thing. I
don't understand why he didn't grapple a little more or try to initiate it. But Mike Perry's training or lack thereof is all something that I think the UFC should really take into account. He's clearly not prepared at the most elite level for competition. He went in there and was essentially a punching bag with no path to victory other than a lucky right hand, right?
Yeah.
That was horrible.
Yeah.
Sad to see, but I don't want to see, Mike Perry, who's still fairly young, and I think he's 3-7 in his last 10 now.
It's something horrible like that.
Yeah,
for
there's
sure.
no reason for a guy like that to take more head trauma for no reason. He's not a contender. He's not even competitive at this point.
Do you think that Darren Till wrote what I thought was a very well-intentioned and from the heart tweet about Mike Perry and basically inviting him him and his family to come to England for 3 to 4 months and train with Darren and his team? I thought it was actually a very classy move from Darren. Do you think there's any chance of Mike taking him up on that?
I don't think that's the answer. I think Mike needs to go to another organization with matchups that are more winnable for him. I mean, he's losing to everyone at this point.
Okay, and you don't think that he can get it back or improve?
I don't think we've seen signs of him improving. I think we've seen signs of him going drastically the other way.
Absolutely. Okay, all right. So anything else you wanted to cover?
At this point, let him rehabilitate his career in another cage and not on your watch, because it's getting hard to watch.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Anything else that we wanted to cover on this card really quickly? Or no, we're good.
No, I'm good to go.
All right, let's get to Bellator 257, Nemkov versus Davis 2. That is happening on Friday, folks. And there's 3 fights I've really got to talk about. The first one is the third fight down. That is Paul Daley versus Saba Hamashi. Then the co-main event, Corey Anderson taking on Yagshmeridov. I think I'm really screwing up that name. I'm sorry, guys. It's too hard.
It's a good college try.
Okay, thank you. And then the main event, Vadim Nemkov, the Bellator light heavyweight champ, rematching Phil Davis. So wanted to really quickly get your thoughts on these fights. And let's start at the top with Vadim Nemkov versus Phil Davis. Fight Geek, I've got Vadim Nemkov, the killer, taking out Phil Davis inside 1 round. Am I crazy?
I mean, the guy's very impressive. I think he's going to take out Davis as well, but I think Davis will last till the 3rd round.
Okay.
I just think, on the feet, Nemkov is going to start distancing himself as Davis gets tired, leaves himself open a little more, starts to get a little sluggish. I think the defensive wrestling will be there. I'm not even sure if Davis will really, at this point of his career, try to be, grappling heavy. He may just try to stand on the feet, and if that happens, I just see, Nemkov being much quicker to the punch and just wearing on him and TKOing him in the 3rd.
Okay, all right. I do agree. Now moving on to the co-main event, Corey Anderson versus Yagshmeridov. Who you got in that one?
Corey Anderson. I think he's the bigger, more experienced, and a high-level fighter. I believe the other guy's making a debut. I could be wrong, in Bellator. But, there's a lot on the line for Corey Anderson to set up his fight with Ryan Bader in the next round, which is everything that, Bellator wants with those 2 signings. Having those guys in the semifinals to see who's going to the championship round is what they were shooting for, I'd imagine. So I'm taking Corey Anderson here in a big spot for him.
I am also taking Corey Anderson. For the record, you are correct that Yagshmeridov is making his Bellator MMA debut, and I think it's going to be a unanimous decision for Corey. Finally, the last fight I wanted to quickly cover, Paul Daley. I believe this is his official swan song retirement fight. Don't quote me on that, but I believe it is, taking on Saba Hamashi.
We've called for many times on here.
Yes, we have. They listened. Scott's a big listener, apparently.
Well, this was a no-brainer. Both these guys like to bang. This should be a fun fight. Who you got?
I have got, ready? Saba Hamashi by split decision.
Split decision. Okay, I'm going with Paul Daley, 2nd round KO.
Really?
Yeah, this is going to be one where both guys are willing to engage. I know Saba Hamashi's a little younger. He's very explosive. He has power, but, the wealth of experience as a kickboxer and striker that Daley has, I think, will shine through, and he'll get the stoppage.
All right. So, moving on to UFC Vegas 24, Whittaker versus Gastelum. Preview and picks.
Great main event.
Great main event. Let's go ahead and start off with that main event. Who you got, Fight Geek? Whittaker versus Gastelum.
I just think the tactics and the championship experience of Whittaker will be too much. I have Robert Whittaker via unanimous decision.
Dang it. I also have Whittaker via unanimous decision. I think Kelvin is a very dangerous floater in this fight. We've seen how great he can be. I just personally think that he hasn't been the same since that UFC 236 Israel Adesanya fight. I think he never quite got over losing that one. And I think he'll have his moments for sure against Whittaker because he's tough as nails. Lord knows he's got an insane chin. I mean, insane. Gastelum does not get knocked out.
And he's very well-rounded. He's a great boxer, and he's a good wrestler.
Absolutely. I still have Whittaker winning this by unanimous decision. I'm going to say 4 rounds to 1 in a great fight.
Yes, I anticipate it being a very high-level fight. One very interesting side note is this will be the first fight of Robert Whittaker's career in the small cage.
Ah, I did not know that.
Yep, and as a guy who uses a ton of movement, that will eliminate some of that. So that is a very interesting side note that I think bodes well for Kelvin if he can cut off the cage and pin Robert up. I just don't see that happening a lot.
Right, absolutely. Okay, so what other fights do we want to go over here?
The co-main, Jeremy Stephens versus Drakkar Klose. I think this has got fight of the night banger all over it. Both are all-action fighters. And I'm going to take Drakkar Klose via split decision. This is going to be a war back and forth.
Give me Stephens via 3rd-round stoppage, baby.
Nice. Okay, and then we have Luis Pena versus, I forgot his first
Alex
name,
Munoz.
Alex Munoz, who I believe was either is or is the former Team Alpha Male wrestling coach.
Oh, let me see about that.
He was on the Contender Series. I think he lost a very close fight to another great fighter.
He lost. His only loss is to Nasrat Haqparast. Unanimous
Absolutely.
decision.
Okay, yeah, that refreshes my memory. So I believe he was or is the wrestling coach, and he's a very impressive guy versus another very strong and big grappler in Pena. I mean, for us grappling nerds, I think this is a tough matchup, but I'm going to take Pena by split decision.
I'm going to take Pena by 2nd-round sub.
Interesting. Okay. I also wanted to call out Andrei Arlovski, winner of his last 3 of his last 4, versus Chase Sherman.
I thought Chase Sherman got cut. It's crazy.
He did, and then he went to bare knuckle and a couple other places, put some wins together. He's back.
Fascinating. I've got Arlovski winning this via unanimous decision. What about you?
Yeah, I got the same thing, which is it's strange to pick Arlovski versus a younger, hard-hitting heavyweight, but he's a very tricky guy at this point. He's good with his footwork. He can fight behind his jab, and unless you're really athletic and drag him into deep waters, he seems to be able to handle himself very well. So yeah, I'm definitely taking Arlovski here, but Chase could land something big and make it interesting. Absolutely.
I wanted to touch on Tracy Cortez, 8-1, coming on, fighting Justine Kish, 7-3. Justine Kish, of course, the poop princess who did poop in the octagon. Hopefully she doesn't do that again. No one is into that, but all the best to Justine.
For Tracy's sake, anyways.
Yeah, exactly. Seriously. Actually, I believe, no joke, it's not a joke, people. They made a rule after the incident that if you defecate on yourself in the octagon, you lose the fight.
I'm in agreement there.
What is that, via disqualification via poop? I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like failure to control your vehicle.
Oh, gosh. Okay. All right, let's move on.
All right, yeah.
I'm starting to feel a little nauseous here.
You got anything else you want to call out on this card?
Not really. I think we've got it. With that, let's take a really quick break, and then we'll be back, folks, with listener questions and more. Hey guys, it's Phil the MMA Dude, letting you know that this episode of the Split Decision Podcast is brought to you by TotalAggressionClothing.com. Visit www.TotalAggressionClothing.com and use the promo code 46210 to receive a special Split Podcast discount on all Total Aggression hats, shirts, hoodies, and more. Again, that's www.TotalAggressionClothing.com with promo code 46210. Hey guys, it's Phil the MMA Dude back with the Split Decision Podcast, episode number 98, here with my always brilliant co-host, the Fight Geek. Fight Geek, right before we get into the listener questions, I forgot something off before the break here. Jake Paul versus Ben Askren, the boxing match is happening this weekend. Straight up, who you got, and will you be watching?
I'll be peering in from some corner of the world, I'm
You're
sure.
going to be, that means you're watching.
But I don't even know if I can make an educated prediction on what kind of action we'll see. I'm picking Ben Askren because I'm praying for Ben Askren. So I'll just go with that. That's my official breakdown.
Really? Wow. Okay, I'm a little surprised there. I'm rooting very much for Ben. I have got Jake Paul winning this inside
If you want
4
a
rounds.
real technical breakdown, I think that, obviously cardio, composure, real experience in a ring in front of a lot of people will definitely benefit Ben
You really
Askren.
think Ben's going to win, huh?
Yeah, I think Ben will definitely win a decision. I think he'll probably be able to jab and paw Jake Paul to death based on the fact that he's going to be so over-aggressive and wanting to knock him out and just being sloppy and just all over the place wild. I think there'll be a big difference. But, who knows?
I hope, I very much, for the record, everyone, I hope that Fight Geek is right. Oh, man.
That guy does not, strike me as a guy who's able to, perform with composure when he's riled up. He's a goofball.
I want you to be right, but I think, unfortunately, that you're mistaken.
What happens if he takes a couple real solid jabs to the nose? I know Ben Askren.
Hopefully he folds like a folding chair and gives
Well,
up.
I don't think it's going to make him fold. He's a big, strong kid, but I think he's probably never been hit in the nose. I mean, I don't think Nate Robinson hit him in the nose. I don't think the previous YouTubers he fought ever, kind of popped him in the nose and stepped him back.
Is Ben really good? Yeah, because Ben's got such a great jab.
Well, Ben's been in Rufus sport, training for the last 20 years and sparring. You don't think the guy is, thrown a jab and busted a guy up in practice? Or
I don't know, man. I mean, I saw striking in the Maya fight. It was hard to watch.
He looks like Frankenstein with his stand-up, but still, he's got to be a tough guy to have grown up in the wrestling room and in the MMA room his whole life.
I mean, I think I even said, and I can see how this would be viewed as a huge tool comment, so I'll take that risk. I think I said, give me 3 months, I'll box Ben Askren. I like my chances. I mean, I've been boxing since I was 16.
Well, that's something you would say.
I mean, I'm prepared to get lit up like a Christmas tree on that, but I guess I've just been so unimpressed with what I've seen from his striking. I know he's an amazing, amazing fighter. Do not get me wrong, obviously.
I understand, yes, but it's only going to take a couple very fundamental things to make Jake Paul feel, uncomfortable in a fight in ways he's never felt before. Who has he fought?
Yeah, no one. But, Ben Askren ain't exactly Tyson Fury.
He fought a 5'7" former NBA player last time. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
All right. You already butchered our intro to the listener questions.
Wow,
Are we done with
chill
this?
out. All right,
Mockery?
everyone. It's now time for my favorite section, Listener Questions. What was that? What? Did you not applaud?
Nope, you butchered it. Let's just
Wow,
get into
you
it.
didn't even applaud for the first. Wow, Fight Geek didn't applaud. That's fucked up, dude.
Hey, well, you threw us off schedule for Ben Askren.
All right, my mom listens to this, so you're making me
match.
swear. I apologize, Mom, but I was hoping Fight Geek would be more respectful of the listener
Is your
questions.
mom
segment.
over your shoulder listening to you record right now?
No, chill. Hey, don't you say anything about my mom. It's Michael Chiesa time. Okay. All right. So, first question comes from my man, Zanbando99. He says, #AskSplitPod. Hey, fellas. Hope you're doing well. I've got 2 questions this week. 1. At one on TNT last week, Demetrius Johnson was finished by a knee to the head on the ground. Why do you think one championship allows these strikes? 2. Is Jimmy Flick retiring too soon?
Great question, Zane.
Yep.
You want me to go first?
Zan. And he's hardcore about that.
Sorry.
He wants us to make sure. Zan, I corrected him. Let the record show. Okay,
sorry,
go ahead.
Zan. All right. Demetrius Johnson was finished. It was very shocking. Like I was saying earlier, I think it's probably the most historically relevant, fight of the weekend. And why do I think they allow these strikes? Because I think, defending yourself while standing up more accurately mimics, a street fight and, something you would use in a martial art to defend yourself, on the streets. You don't get to just stand up with someone over you and be safe. I think that, it's just, I think it's more to, I guess just mimic the real combat situation.
Yeah, very hard to disagree with that. I think it's ironic. Maybe ironic's a little bit harsh, but DJ was obviously defending the grounded knee from Jan to Sterling a few weeks ago, saying, "I don't know why this is even illegal. It should be legal."
Yeah, but it's not really ironic because
to his credit, after the fight, DJ said, "I stand by that. I think it should be allowed."
Which I think takes away the irony. Demetrius Johnson is in favor of something.
Yeah, I didn't mean to take a shot at him.
I think Demetrius Johnson handled it as only DJ could. Clearly he was fighting an opponent who was, very big, very
looked
strong,
a lot bigger
very
than
skilled.
him. I am very interested in those weight, that did not look like the same weight class, but whatever.
But, I don't think Demetrius Johnson's stock takes a huge hit here. I don't think he looked bad while the fight lasted. I think he got caught in a wild scramble with a rule set that he hasn't practiced the majority of his career, and a guy who is familiar and probably has practiced, that strike quite a bit, landed it. It was brutal. It's unexpected, and that's why we love the sport. I thought it was – as it's hard to see a guy like DJ get knocked out for the first time in his 30s, it was still an exciting moment for the sport.
Absolutely. And then really quickly, his second part of the question is Jimmy Flick retiring too soon. I don't know if you've seen it. I'll be the first one to say that I have not seen every interview about him, but it looks like a particularly heartbreaking retirement. Jimmy is on record saying, "We have no 401k. We have no backup plan." And that, he kind of insinuates that, the UFC not having the backs of fighters long-term financially, that's why he's retiring. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
It is what it is to a certain extent. I think any person who chooses to retire, then it's not too soon. It's exactly the right time. He's got to assess his life and where he's at.
He's saying it's due to fighters being too stupid to unionize. That's even a quote on SB Nation.
Well, we could go left and right. We could just make blanket statements like that about life, about anything, couldn't we?
Sure. So you don't think that Jimmy has any points with the fighter
clearly
unionization?
He has points, but at this point, it is what it is. If you'd like to continue your fighting career, and he's decided that the cons outweigh the pros, and
which I respect.
If that's what he's decided, then I don't think it's too soon. I think it's exactly the right time. That's my point.
Yep.
You have to kind of, I don't understand retiring and saying, but I'd stay if you did this. Well, that's not what they're doing right now. So maybe someday he'll come back.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's move to a question from our main man, very loyal Split Podcast OG. That's Jalen Ware. That's at strive2b_great. He says, Jeremy Stephens was once a very promising prospect. He TKO'd RDA. Never reached a title fight. Do you think he reached his full potential? #AskSplitPod.
Great question. I remember
always.
Jeremy Stephens as one of the youngest guys on the roster who was a very, very promising prospect. And when you remember him back then and kind of the way he was thought of and all that, I don't think you can say he ever reached his full potential. Now, with that said, did he have, a great career in his own right as a very special, exciting, blood and guts knockout type fighter that will be remembered a lot longer for his exciting performances than per se like maybe his record or his achievements?
Sure.
I couldn't tell you Jeremy Stephens' record. It's probably sub 500 in the UFC, but I could tell you 4 or 5 fights where he was as violent as any featherweight that's ever walked the planet. So he'll always have that going for him, but I don't think he reached his full potential in terms of accolades. No.
Yeah, I tend to agree. The one thing I will say though is that Jalen's question is interesting because he says, has he reached his full potential? Well, how do you define that? Does that mean what he could have been or the best he will be? Now, if he's saying has he reached the best he will be, my answer is yes.
He's clearly reached his full potential in his career now. As he's later in his 30s, I think, right?
Yeah. Yes.
He's had many injuries. He's went on multiple runs to the top and been beaten back a couple times. So now he's more just kind of occupying,
he's
gatekeeper
34
status.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, he's 34, but he's got like 25, 30 fights in the UFC. So he's an older 34.
Mm-hmm.
I think he blew his knee out once. So he's taken damage too. But no, I think he's an all-time exciting small guy, but in KO guy for the smaller weight classes. But I don't think he reached what he could have been. No. But has he? I don't know. This is a difficult way of saying it. Right now at 34 years old, I don't think he's going to ascend to championship level.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Okay, so this next question comes from our man, Dean Dog. That's at Dean, DAWG3. Give him a follow, guys. He says, I was going to wait for episode 100, but I have to ask. Do you guys think, even if Holland gets wrestling advice or coaching from DC or Khabib, does he have the time to be equal with fighters that have been doing this since childhood? Hashtag AskSplitPod. So AskSplitPod, as always, peace.
Yeah, go ahead. You take this one. What do you think?
I think it's a great question. Here's my honest answer. Yes. I think that, I know that that's not popular. I know that, people's gut instincts will say, no, Kevin doesn't have time to change.
But he's only 28.
I just don't believe it, man. I think Kevin is, first of all, Kevin is an incredibly talented striker. Marvin Vettori, in the first minute and a half, realized that if he kept standing with Kevin, he was going to sleep. Let's just be clear about that. That's a fact.
I don't think he was thinking that. Vettori has
he was getting lit up. He was getting lit up standing.
I mean, no doubt Kevin Holland is tricky, but I don't think he was terrified of getting knocked out. I think he knew the safest path to
Marvin
victory.
did not want to stand with him. I mean, that's for sure.
No, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But no, I think as much as anything, it's time. He's only 28. He's extremely active. He obviously hasn't even kind of hit his full physical potential. What he's struggling with now is kind of the strength. He has the kind of ability, but he needs kind of the strength to develop that, the wrestling defense and kind of that technique as well. And he has time to do that. I mean, you look at some of the champions, and when they start ascending to that level, a guy like Israel Adesanya is already 4 years older than him. So,
right.
So I think time's on his side by the time he's 33. You look at guys like Adesanya who may be 37, 38. There's going to be opportunities for him to improve and have multiple title runs from here if he wants them. I just think that's the way it looks for him.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move on to a question from my man, Cyrus King. That's at Cyrus King. He's got a great show, Combat Corner himself. Make sure you guys check. Better chance of beating Izzy, Marvin Vettori in a rematch or Robert Whittaker in a rematch?
I personally would say Marvin Vettori based on the fact.
I don't agree. I disagree respectfully.
I don't think either of them will beat him, but when you look at the type of fighter who gave him problems in Jan Blachowicz, who's a big, strong fighter who was able to stick to a game plan, that's basically without, matching their skill sets, the same profile of Marvin Vettori. A big, strong, technical guy who's willing to be intelligent and execute the same game plan 5 rounds in a row. That's what just beat Israel. So I think there's a small glimmer there. I don't see, Robert Whittaker beating Izzy at his own game, being elusive, striking on the feet, striking at range. That is Israel's game. That's what he's going to look his best at, just like he did the first time they fought, So
yeah.
That's my case. I'd say slightly Marvin Vettori, but I think Israel still comfortably handles both of them.
Okay, all right. I agree, by the way. Moving on to another split podcast, OG. That's Eduardo at Landa Crew. He says, typically, what pay-per-views excite you more? 3 title fight pay-per-views or 1 title fight pay-per-views with an exciting co-main? Hashtag AskSplitPod.
I mean, we'll take them all, right?
Yeah, I mean, my first thought, honestly, is that I'm more interested in how good the main event is, honestly.
Yeah, honestly, as am I. I think 3 title fights is... I think that third from the bottom title fight just gets too slept on. So I would say I prefer the title, the big headliner with the good co-main.
It's like this. Like, I'm not afraid to admit that I was more excited for UFC 260 Ngannou versus Miocic 2 than I am for UFC 261 Usman Masvidal 2, which has 3 title fights.
I could see that.
Is that weird?
No, I don't think so, especially considering, the Usman Masvidal title fight is like super kind of watered down for us, our taste buds right now. So
yeah, exactly.
It's not a real sexy one to look forward to. I mean, we're all going to watch, but at this point it's like, okay.
I'm actually, while we're on that subject, Fight Geek, I wanted to ask, I'm seeing on Twitter and online in general, people are really writing off Jorge Masvidal's chances. I mean, to the point where we're almost openly mocking him, that he has no shot in hell. I'm wondering, obviously he's made some polarizing decisions in the last year in a bunch of different ways. I think that he's alienated a lot of old fans. Are the fans being blinded to his chances because of their dislike for him?
Probably to a certain extent, I would say. People's biases play in there. But with that said, I mean, this is a horrible matchup for Jorge Masvidal. He knows it. Everybody knows it. On paper, this is just not a matchup where he does well. Can he go in there and maybe, be durable and find a way to land something significant in an exchange and try and shock the world? I think he has the toughness and the fact that he's been at ATT for a decade, the skill to do that. But you're going against a guy who has very, very, very few chinks in the armor, and is a thinking man's fighter and has all the physical gifts and the style that doesn't lend itself. So, I mean, it's a rock and a hard place.
Absolutely agreed. Okay, so our next question comes from our friend Eryk Bouchard. Is that correct? Or Buchert. Oh my gosh, Eric's gonna stop listening. Eryk, I'm so sorry. Buchert. He says, if Andrade were to beat Shevchenko, would you rank that among the biggest upsets in UFC history? Also, Arlovski has won 4 of his last 5 fights and is currently on a 3-fight win streak. How many, if any, losses can he afford before the UFC cuts him? Hashtag AskSplitPod.
I'll take the Arlovski question because I kind of feel strongly about this. I don't think the UFC will go the route with Arlovski the same way they did with guys, like Verdum and Rampage, and for the simple fact that he was a champion from the early eras when, Dana came in and has been extremely loyal to the company. He's actually right at the top of all the record holder lists for everything. He was never really an import, even though he left and came back. I think he has an amazing standing within the company. And for that, I think he'll probably just retire when the UFC says it's time. But with that said, I don't think there's really a lot of reason to usher him that way, considering he's done so well. He's firmly in that gatekeeper role, where if you can beat, I think we've seen it in the last few fights. I think he beat Tanner Bozier and kind of stopped that hype train, but then he lost to Tom Aspinall, and Tom Aspinall is kind of one of the hot young heavyweights. So he's a great barometer in the heavyweight division, and I think the UFC will, keep him as long as he's not getting KO'd every fight.
Yeah, I think that's very true. Very hard to disagree with that. And now, okay, so MMA by Milliken says, left you a question on Instagram. Fight Geek.
I'm grabbing that right now.
Grab that right now, bro. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Trying to grow that page as well, so thanks, Milliken, for leaving a question there.
Yep. Everyone, real quick, just while he's looking up that question, if you guys are enjoying the podcast, if you could give us a quick 5-star review, wherever you're listening to this, whether it be YouTube, whether it be iTunes or Google Play Store. It does a tremendous service for us and helps us out a lot. So we very grateful for any and all 5-star reviews.
Awesome. And I got it queued up here. MMA by Milliken says, is the pay-per-view format a thing of the past? If so, should a salary cap be implemented in MMA as it is in the NBA? Hashtag AskSplitPod. Interesting question.
I hope not, because
I don't understand how you could implement a salary cap, because let's say, the UFC acts as one franchise, such as it's only the equivalent of, the Dallas Cowboys. So I'm not sure how they could pay all the independent contractors a salary cap. I think I'm not sure how that would cross over. I don't think it fits.
I agree. I was going to say, that would also be complicated, because, it does sort of feel like, like obviously the UFC cares a little bit more about their fighters, maybe pays them a little bit more. And, in terms of unionizing, if the champions aren't going to do it, it's probably not going to happen. And they're getting paid, half decently right now, until champions of the UFC put a foot down and join in any kind of union.
Yeah, they need
it's
a
not going to
revenue
work.
split in order. I think that's maybe what we're talking about more so than a salary cap.
Yes.
The fighters getting a revenue split of the money being earned. I think right now it can be as low as 10%, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
UFC. Don't quote me on that, but I think in other leagues, as in the NBA, for instance, it's much closer to 50-50, if not 50-50. So just imagine the difference in the money that's actually going to the fighters.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Okay, so I've got another question from Matt at GoGo Safa MMA. That's at GoGo Safa MMA. He says, "What's up, Phil? What's up, Mr. Fight Geek? Do you think the UFC should do more trades with other organizations like they did with Mighty Mouse and Ben? I personally think it's a great idea, especially if one fighter is becoming too dominant in his or her division. Hashtag AskSplitPod."
I love this question, and I think it's a great idea. But my twist on it is I wouldn't trade the fighters who are becoming too dominant. I would do what the NBA does, just like with James Harden this past year with the Rockets. He was unhappy with something in his current situation and wanted a trade, so he was able to be traded. What if there's I'm trying to think off the top of my head, and right now I can't, but think of someone like Ryan Hall, who's a little bit disgruntled, for instance. What if we were to trade Ryan Hall to one for a fighter to come here because he's disgruntled and can't find fights? That takes a disgruntled fighter, puts him in a different situation that might be better for him, and brings new blood into a space where a disgruntled fighter was in the past. I think that really would clean up the divisions and keep them moving. And I think it's more realistic than trading your dominant champions, because those are your diamonds, those are your assets. You're not going to want to trade them that often.
Very difficult to disagree with any
I'm
of
on
that.
fire tonight.
Oh, chill out! Wow, Fight Geek's feeling himself a little too much here. Okay, so question from my man at 2Comfy69. Whoa, 2Comfy69. This is a children's podcast. My mother listens to this. I apologize, Mom. I don't know what he's talking about. Anyways, who would make the hottest MMA couple? Hashtag AskSplitPod.
Did you put a lot of thought into this one?
I didn't. Why don't you go first?
All right, I'm gonna
Michelle Waterson and Luke Rockhold. I don't know. They're both pretty good looking.
No, I'm gonna say Brian Ortega and Alexis Grasso.
Ooh,
Alexa Grasso.
Yeah, Ortega plus
Ortega's
a bunch of
no-brainer.
them.
I mean, I think that what we know about Ortega is that Halle Berry was at least interested, and that Claudia Gadelha wants to have his children. So that's going for him.
Claudia Gadelha wants a lot of stuff she's not going to do.
Anyways, so I think Ortega's the unquestioned male, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. And
He's
then
a good-looking dude. What can I say?
And then, I mean, I'm a personal fan of Alexa Grasso.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to change that to Brian Ortega. I mean, I respect the Alexa Grasso pick. Do not get me wrong. I'm going to say Ortega and Tracy Cortez.
Both winners in my book. Is that going to wrap it before we get in trouble this week?
Yeah, seriously. Y'all are trying to get us in trouble. Come on now. All right. I believe that wraps us up. Fight Geek, take us away, baby.
All right, guys. As usual, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Google Play, Stitcher, and more. I'm at the Fight Geek MMA. He's at the MMA. Phil, the MMA dude. We are at Split_podcast. It's 4 words. The Split Decision Podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and we will talk to you next week. Peace.
Peace.